Hey guys, welcome to the show. This is Daniel Aranzamendi. You are tuning into the Aranzamendi podcast. Today we have an explosive story that is equal parts drama, public spectacle, and a brutal lesson in the cost of frivolous litigation. $1 million loser in court. Donald Trump has just been rocked in an appeals court, and we're going to talk about this case, which is the case of a massive $1 million legal penalty, the sanctions against Donald Trump and his lawyer, Alina Habba. I'm not sure if you guys remember his lawyer, Alina Habba. Actually, I do have a picture of them here. Look at this. This is them in a different process. So what's going on is that Donald Trump and Alina Habba, this week just faced right now a federal appeals court delivering a final crushing blow. Okay? Let's rewind for a moment because a lot of people may not remember this started back in around 2022. So what is this case about? This was a lawsuit filed by Mr. Trump, President Donald Trump, but it was in 2022. So let's say Mr. Trump, he was not a president in 2022. So it was filed by Donald Trump in 2022, a sprawling 16-count complaint against his perceived enemies, Hillary Clinton, the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, the former FBI director, James Comey, and many others, a bunch of different Democrats. And what was the core of the accusation? Well, Trump was claiming that they were running this RICO conspiracy, which is a serious racketeering charge, actually, for which he was charged in Georgia. And actually, today, that was just dismissed. I'm going to do a second, completely separate episode to cover this Georgia case because I believe it's completely, it baffled me. It's completely, unbelievable that they just dismissed the case in Georgia when there's so much evidence against, all these people, including Trump's lawyers, pleading guilty. But that's a separate topic. So Donald Trump in 2022 accused, Hillary Clinton and a bunch of people, including the DNC, of, this very serious charge, a RICO conspiracy, to rig the 2016 election and fabricate the Russia collusion story. And the whole thing was honestly a fantasy, in legal clothing, or pretty much, if you will. The original judge for this case, a U.S. District Judge Donald Middlebrooks, he tore it apart in a devastating, this is back then, okay? He tore it apart in a devastating 46-page ruling, calling it a quintessential shotgun pleading. So imagine firing a shotgun and the pellets kind of go, they scatter everywhere, right? Hitting everything, but at the same time hitting no particular real, aim or nothing of substance. So that was what the judge said the lawsuit was, back then. It was full of claims that were factually false, legally baseless, and plainly brought for a political purpose, not a legitimate, legal one. So Judge Middlebrooks didn't just dismiss the case, he ordered sanctions. He essentially said this case never should have been filed and ordered Donald Trump and his lawyer, Alina Habba, like I said, if you don't remember her, this is her. He ordered Donald Trump and Alina Habba to pay nearly $1 million in fines for abusing the court system. So imagine how shameful, how devastating must it be that you not only lose the case, you also get fined for at least around $1 million. Now, here's the update from today. Let me show you what's being reported today. So here we have the appeals court. Obviously, Donald Trump and Alina Habba appeal, as they usually do. Donald Trump will appeal everything until he can make it to the Supreme Court. Why? Because we know he has right now a support system in the Supreme Court of the United States. We know we have 6 Republican judges, 6, only 3 Democrats. So 6 Republicans, 3 Democrats. Out of the 6 that we have, there's 6 Republican judges. 3 of them, Donald Trump appointed himself. So Donald Trump is always confident that no matter what happens, at a lower court or an appeals court, he can always go all the way up to the Supreme Court, and he's going to have way better chances of overturning whatever it is. Doesn't matter what the law says, doesn't matter what the federal law may be or state law, if they're able to, move a case to a federal system from a state court system. It doesn't even matter what the Constitution says, because we saw it with this immunity, the presidential immunity ruling, which they just made out of whole cloth, out of nowhere. No other president ever requested something like that before or even needed it. Maybe Nixon, but he didn't even ask for it. But Donald Trump, this is the first time that we have an actual criminal president, a convicted felon in the White House, somebody who is like surrounded by so many corrupt people, and who is in it of itself, a very corrupt person. Like he is very corrupt. We know it. Even before he came to the presidency, like to the White House, even before he made it to the White House. We know he had a bunch of cases. He was corrupt. He was already deemed, a fraudster. And then by the time that he won, we knew that he has all these things going on with Russia. And then we know that he incited the insurrection. We know that he tried to extort, Zelensky. And when it came to Ukraine, this is why he's a twice impeached president. He has been declared an insurrectionist twice by 2 different courts in Colorado. Back in the day, he was found to be a fraudster in the New York case, and Letitia James New York case, which was upheld, by a jury and then even by the appeals court, who ended up removing Trump's fine, but they upheld the verdict. They said that he indeed committed fraud when it came to his property valuations and all of that. So it's a long list of crimes when it comes to Donald Trump. But anyway, the thing is that right now, when it comes to this update from today, look at, let's go back to the article. Here we go. Appeals court upholds $1 million penalty against Trump in lawsuit against Hillary Clinton. So Trump and Alina Habba appealed that ruling, like I was saying, as they usually do, trying to get the sanctions tossed out. And then the U.S. Court of Appeals of the 11th Circuit didn't just reject them, they annihilated the appeal. In their own words, the claims were untimely, meritless, implausible, and flat out frivolous. They backed up the lower court ruling, finding that the legal team committed sanctionable conduct. And again, let me repeat this. This is not only bad because you're losing, they're ruling against you, saying that the lower court was indeed correct, that they actually ruled based on the law, and that you guys had just, filed a frivolous, meritless, and baseless lawsuit. But they also confirmed the fact that the legal team for Donald Trump, and Alina Habba, that the legal team had committed sanctionable conduct. So think of the severity when it comes to this. The appeals court, one of the highest legal bodies in the nation, confirmed that Trump's lawyers knew, or should have known, their arguments were nonsense, but filed them anyway. So they upheld the staggering near $1 million penalty, leaving Trump and Habba on the hook. This is a judicial smackdown, rarely seen at this level, considering that this is Donald Trump, a former president and the current president, which tends to get a lot of respect and consideration when it comes to the court system, right? Because we still talking, like I said, about an ex-president and now the current president of the United States. And they're seeing this for what it is. It's a vicious, legal strategy, which brings us to a crucial question. Why does Donald Trump file these lawsuits knowing that they're doomed? He knows that obviously they are doomed, but he still files them anyway. And then that's why we see all these lawyers around, Donald Trump and Trump's orbit losing their licenses, being sanctioned, being disbarred. Why? Because they know how the law works. They know what the law is, state or federal or the Constitution, and they are still filing all these lawsuits on behalf of Trump. Why? Because they know they're going to get, if they go for these 5 minutes of fame, even if I lose my license, Donald Trump can still appoint me to some position in his government. Donald Trump can, connect me to some other government, to some company that was going to help me make millions of dollars, which we're seeing, with many of the people in Trump's orbit right now. So for many legal analysts, the answer points to a tactic of weaponization of the courts for political gain. It's not about winning in a courtroom. It's about winning in the court of public opinion. And that's where Donald Trump, you have to give it to him. He is definitely a master. When it comes to manipulating the media, and when it comes to public opinion, public perception, he is a master at, just planting all these seeds that at some point are going to generate the result that he wants, which is to generate confusion, to flood the zone, which is what Steve Bannon will claim consistently, right? So filing a RICO conspiracy suit against Hillary Clinton makes a headline reinforcing a narrative for Donald Trump's base, for the MAGA world, right? Regardless of the final legal result, regardless of that, the final legal result, if it's tossed out, if it's smacked down, he doesn't care. He just wants the public perception, right? These lawsuits are forcing opponents to spend millions of dollars on defense, draining their resources and forcing them through years of emotional distress, even if they ultimately, don't prevail. So I believe this is more about revenge. And a lot of people, say the same thing. Every week spent discussing a new frivolous lawsuit is a week not spent discussing more damaging legal or political matters, like the economy, like the jobs report that they're not gonna publish this time. October, they just announced that the October jobs report, it's never gonna see the light of the day. Why? Because it's a disaster. They know it's a disaster. They're claiming that because the government was shut down, there was some problems in terms of how the information flows or the management of these reports, so we just can't share it. Do you believe that, are you going to tell me that if Donald Trump knew that October was an amazing month for jobs, he was not just going to go until the end of the word if need be to find these, pieces of information, bits, this data, all the data, and make sure that it was put together so that we could give it to the American people, to the country, show the world that, the jobs are thriving right now under his administration? They just did the same with some, economy related reports. The GDP related reports right now, there's 3 data reports that Donald Trump is hiding, and they just announced yesterday these other reports are not coming out. So this is one of the biggest reasons why they're doing all these things, obviously to punish the political enemies, punish them legally. Even if we don't prevail, at least I'm gonna make you suffer. You're gonna have to spend money. You're gonna be stressed. We're gonna get into your computer, into your finances, into your personal life. We're gonna get into your bank accounts. We're gonna make this painful for you. Even if you prevail, in the end, if you prevail, who cares? We're the government. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna sue me? I'm not gonna pay personally. Donald Trump is not gonna, put his hand in his pocket to get a couple of millions out and pay a fine. If anything, taxpayers are gonna be held accountable for whatever the government has to pay if at some point some wrongful, wrongful processing or prosecution lawsuit is filed against them. So the strategy is not free. However, it's costing the people that he sues. And frankly, as taxpayers, it's costing us because all these frivolous lawsuits cost money. The DOJ, Pam Bondi, what she is doing, doing Trump's bidding, all his dirty work, this is costing us, so it literally clogs the court system with baseless claims, diverting judicial resources from people who have real, legitimate legal harm to address, and they don't have the time, the resources to get to that because they're right now so busy dealing with all these frivolous lawsuits on behalf of the president. And that's sad. This is a larger, it's part of a larger pattern of weaponization where we see, Donald Trump and his administration weaponizing the legal system, and this is deeply concerning when we look at the Department of Justice itself. Right now, we see a pattern of questionable appointments, suggesting a shift to, treating the DOJ not as a neutral arbiter of justice, but as a personal law firm for the president, for Donald Trump. Take the case of Alina Habba. Her appointment as the acting, Alina Habba, let me put her on screen again here. Take her case, for instance. Her appointment as the acting U.S. attorney for the District of New Jersey has been, fraught with controversy. Federal judges found her appointment was secured through a novel series of legal and personal moves that circumvented the proper process, a ruling that said she was unlawfully serving, pretty much. So judges have found this lawyer, this Trump lawyer, unlawfully serving as a U.S. attorney. And this is not an isolated incident. The Justice Department under this administration has faced multiple successful challenges to its appointments. We saw one recently from Eastern District of Virginia. Judge Cameron McGowan Curry, that's the full name, dismissed the criminal case against two high-profile, Trump critics, former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. The reason? The prosecutor who secured these indictments, Lindsay Halligan, the ex, Arizona beauty queen and Trump's own personal lawyer, was appointed illegally. The judge found that the Trump administration appointed Lindsay Halligan illegally to her role. And then the judge ruled that all actions flowing from that defective appointment were unlawful. That's why the cases fell apart. They didn't even get to the merit of those cases, of if it was a frivolous case or not. They just started with the most basic thing. Were you even qualified or authorized legally to be in this role and therefore to, file, these accusations, against James Comey and Letitia James? And they said, you didn't even make it to first base, let alone second or third base. We're not even going to get that far, because there was a lot of questions also when it came to the merit of the cases themselves, jury manipulation. There was so many flaws when it came to that case. But still, it's a stunning rebuke. The administration is making appointments so legally questionable that judges are voiding the indictments. So this brings me to this other point that Mark Elias will discuss a lot. Even Glenn Kirshner. Mark Elias is a constitutional lawyer that is always on with Brian Tyler Cohen on his show. And then Glenn Kirshner, a federal prosecutor, ex-federal prosecutor with more than 30 years of experience. They will always speak to this, term, what they call it, the presumption of regularity. Okay, presumption of regularity. So the presumption of regularity is nothing more than this presumption. When the court system, the judges will assume that anytime the government, let's say the Department of Justice, is filing a case or submitting some, like a motion or presenting some claim, they are assuming that the government is always acting out of good faith. So over the years, the government has always benefited from this principle, this presumption of regularity. We believe that the government, is always working in the best interest of the people and legally and constitutionally. But are they? Is that the case under this administration? So right now, the thing that Mark Elias is saying, Glenn Kirshner and many other, legal analysts, experts are saying that the courts are finally, catching up. They're realizing that we just can't keep assuming, we just can't keep employing or considering this presumption of regularity, because this administration has proven case after case after case, time after time, that they're lying, like openly and voluntarily lying to the courts. They've said it with the Abrego Garcia case. They've said it with, all these federalization of the National Guard cases where, it's been lie after lie. And the thing is that some of these lawyers have even admitted that they are lying, or that they are just saying stuff that has been given to them by, people, up the chain. So it's been a disaster, a complete disaster when it comes to all these cases. So that presumption of regularity, it's being questioned right now by judges and courts. They're like, we just can't trust anymore that the government is working out of good faith, and that we just should assume that whatever they are saying is actually true. So things are changing when it comes to that. So now, finally, let's look at the rhetoric. When Judge Curry dismissed the Comey and James cases because of the illegal appointment, White House press secretary, it's sad. I should have brought that video for you so you could hear it. So Caroline Leavitt went to the press after the James Comey and Letitia James case were dismissed, and she told the press immediately, these are partisan judges. We are used to this. We know that we have some judges that are radical Democrats, that are activists, and they're trying to push, a narrative. They're trying to benefit, their party, yada, 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 stuff along those lines, right? And she called them partisan activists who were undermining the judicial branch, right? And do you notice a pattern? When a judge rules against Donald Trump's interests, even if the ruling is about an illegal appointment by his own administration, the judge is immediately branded as a biased partisan enemy. This is the constant, chipping away at the legitimacy of the judicial system, the one branch of government meant to be truly independent. But this is the thing. I'm bringing up this Caroline Leavitt case because she immediately went to her go-to defense. Anytime there's a ruling against Donald Trump, which in this case is 9 times out of 10, right now, this is a fact. The Justice Department, the Department of Justice, I should say, DOJ, is losing around 96% of its cases, guys. This has been stated by Mark Elias, Glenn Kirshner constantly, and you can find these stats online too. 96% of their cases, they're losing them. When before this administration, the DOJ used to have roughly a 97, 98% winning percentage. 97 and 98 winning percentage. And now it's pretty much completely reversed. They are losing around 96% of the cases. Why? Why would that be? Would you hire a lawyer that, who is losing 9 out of every 10 cases? And, for which the judges are saying, that his cases and his performance is questionable, that he is lying to the court. Would you hire a lawyer like that? I don't think so. That's Pam Bondi's DOJ's agency right now. But anyway, the lesson from the 1 million sanction right now is simple. The strategy of turning political grievances into frivolous lawsuits for political gain has a real world, 7-figure, in this case, it's a real world 7-figure price tag. And the pattern of questionable appointments shows the price may be much higher for the integrity of the justice systems, because right now they are laughable. The Justice Department right now is just shameful. Their actions are laughable. Nobody is respecting what they're doing because they're not based on the law right now. And that's why we should keep an eye on all of this. I believe that this is shameful for the country. It's a disgrace that we have the same government, the same administration, the same president who was screaming and yelling and crying and throwing a tantrum consistently, stating that the Biden government was the Biden administration was abusing the FBI and abusing the DOJ and supposedly going after him politically. But most of the cases that were filed against Donald Trump actually were able to move forward. And the ones that didn't, it was because the Supreme Court saved them with the immunity decision that was never a thing before, and it was not. It's completely unconstitutional. Has no base, but that's what they ruled, and they are pretty much they have the final say when it comes to legal stuff. So they decided they wanted to save Donald Trump, and they saved him. And when it came to the classified documents case, we know that the judge that he appointed, Judge Eileen Cannon back in Florida, she decided to save him too, with that crazy, claim, stating that supposedly the special counsel, Jack Smith, was named illegally, that there was a questionable situation when it came to the appointment of Jack Smith, when the Supreme Court has ruled for decades that special counsel, is legal, and that's pretty much the same when it comes to the federal system, history, precedent. We know special counsels are always legal. No problem with that, but that's what she claimed because Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court Justice, he, in one of his opinions, I think it was with the presidential immunity case, he kind of like included with his opinion something. He mentioned something about the special counsel. Oh, we should kind of like revise the special counsel thing because I'm not sure if that's a special counsel like Jack Smith was legally appointed. So he just kind of like put that out there. And then once that ruling was out and that opinion had that additional, like sentence or whatever from Clarence Thomas, Eileen Cannon pretty much, she saw it, she read it, and she said, this is what I need. And she used that opinion, which has not been legally validated. There's no ruling on the merits of that claim of, legal counsel being illegal, a special counsel being illegal when special counsels we know have been ruled to be legal all along for decades. But anyway, she used that and she said, yeah, case closed. We have one Supreme Court judge who has an opinion about Jack Smith that maybe this was an illegal an illegal appointment. So I'm just going to dismiss the case for Donald Trump. And yeah, that's it. That's what she did. And then Hunter Biden's lawyers, Hunter Biden was still like in the middle of one of his cases. I think it was like the tax evasion case or something. It was at some point, what was it, last year or so? Anyway, so his lawyers, as soon as they heard Eileen Cannon claiming that special counsels were illegal, and that's why she was somehow dismissing, Trump's case for the classified documents case, then Hunter Biden's lawyers went to the federal judge and said, hey, Judge, Mr. Judge, we also want to dismiss our client's case because this case was brought up also by a special counsel. My customer, my client, is being charged because of a special counsel investigation. And now we know this is illegal. So if Donald Trump's case was able, to get tossed out in Florida, we want to toss out our Hunter Biden case here in federal court too. And the judge said, not so fast, Junior. We're not doing that. That is not legal precedent. This is not the law. Special counsel, is legal. It has been ruled legal by the Supreme Court time and time again, and also by the federal court. That's not what we do here. So I don't know what Judge Eileen Cannon did. That's not based on the law. It's not based on, legal history or precedent. So we're not going to do that. And they didn't allow that argument for Hunter Biden to go forward. So you can see that other judges were not even other judges in the federal system were buying Eileen Cannon evident partisan defense of Donald Trump to dismiss that case. But the guy, I don't know, man, this guy, he has been able to get away with so much, Donald Trump. Like, look at right now, like I said, that Georgia case was just dismissed. The Fani Willis case that, she was removed because then she had an affair with one of the prosecutors on the case or whatever. I think it was a prosecutor on the case, and which really didn't affect the case itself. But I understand, it may give a bad impression. And obviously Donald Trump and his team, they were going to hammer Fani Willis for doing so and distract and say that there was something that they were just conspiring against Donald Trump because they had some personal thing going on and that's why he was helping her or whatever the claim was going to be. It was still a really bad move. It was still very unprofessional of Fani Willis. I was very disappointed because she had a solid case. She had a solid case to the point where Donald Trump's lawyers were pleading guilty. Sidney Powell, remember this, lawyers pleading guilty. You can claim that a regular citizen who has no knowledge of law can be maybe, forced into pleading guilty because, they're scared, but not a lawyer. Sidney Powell, Kenneth Chesebro, Jenna Ellis, all these people pled guilty. And others were also accused, but they didn't plead guilty. You had John Eastman. There was also Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani didn't plead, guilty. He pled guilty in a separate Georgia case related to defamation. He had been defaming these two election workers And when it came to, the actual court case where he had to present the evidence to back the claims that he used to defame these election workers, which actually led to, their lives being destroyed. These people were doxxed. They were persecuted. They received death threats. They had to move to different states. Every time they moved to a different state, they would still try to find them and still publish again their new address. These two ladies suffered a lot. And then Rudy Giuliani admitted in court that he had no proof to back the claims. So he ended up admitting in court that he defamed these ladies and then settled outside of court because he was fined $150 million for defaming these two ladies. But anyway, so you have Rudy Giuliani in court admitting that he defamed these two ladies, that he had no proof to back the claims. He literally admitted it and then ended up, they settled for some amount because they had been now fighting for a long time over Rudy Giuliani playing games and not paying. So eventually they settled for some probably lower amount, but it was undisclosed. But so who knows? Maybe he finally got 80 million, maybe half, maybe 70, 60 million dollars, who knows? But he had to pay a lot of money. But I don't even care that much about the defamation, even though that tells you that he was lying, knowingly lying. And these were the lies that the people bought to go and, push for an insurrection and be violent and all of this. They even wanted to kill Mike Pence because of it. But even though that's important to me when it comes to Trump's liability, the fact that his lawyers, at least 3 of them, decided to take a guilty plea and to collaborate with Fani Willis, collaborate with the prosecution. And not only there, they were starting to plead guilty in other cases too, because these cases were also happening around, the battleground states like Arizona and Michigan and Wisconsin. In Arizona, Jenna Ellis also pled guilty and accepted a prosecution, collaboration deal in exchange for not facing criminal charges. Jenna Ellis. I have the video. Jenna Ellis was crying. She went to the court in Georgia and she wrote a letter to all the people from Georgia, apologizing and saying that was, her conduct was very unprofessional. It shouldn't have happened and yada, yada, yada. But she told the judge, if I had known back then what I know right now about Donald Trump, I would have never represented Donald Trump. So when you have lawyers admitting that whole thing was a scam, that was illegal, and that they had legal exposure, so that's why they were forced to take the plea deal, that tells you everything you need to know. We have Donald Trump on a phone call. Audio. They recorded the whole phone call. Republicans in Georgia, the Governor Kemp and the State Secretary Brad Raffensperger. These people recorded the call where Donald Trump was pressuring them, pressing them. I need you to go and find me 11,780 votes. That's all I need you to do. Go out there and find it. And they're like, hey, Mr. President, what are you talking about? We already ran a couple of recounts here. We did the recounts. We did the whole thing. We know how to run elections here in Georgia. We did everything we could do. There is no more votes to find. And Donald Trump will keep, no, you have to find it. The people are counting on you guys. We know we won. How does Trump, how the fuck does Trump know he won Georgia when you have the Republican governor, the Republican Secretary of State Secretary, both of them, Republicans, telling them, bro, we did the whole thing. You are fucking doomed. You have to accept it, admit it. You lost. So, and there was so much more when it came to the whole, conspiring. So that RICO charge, but still, they just let him off the hook. And that means that, who knows, if they let him off the hook here, that means that, who knows, maybe some other cases may run the same fate. It all depends on the will of the prosecutor if they want to keep pushing, when it comes to that. But who knows? It sounds to me like this person could have been a Trump sympathizer. I'm not sure if this prosecutor is affiliated to the Republican Party or MAGA or has any ties to Donald Trump. I'll have to, dig deep into that case a little bit later and then come up with another episode for you guys. But for the time being, hey, thank you for tuning in. Let me know what you think of this episode. Leave a comment, please. Tell me if you believe that, if you believe Donald Trump is literally manipulating the court system for political gain right now. That's what we see. This is what most judges are saying, that they can't trust that the government is acting out of good faith anymore. So that presumption of, regularity, they can't really consider that, like, at least not from the get-go. Like, a case, it's brought before them. Now they're starting from a position of doubt, as opposed to saying, hey, this comes from the government, we trust the government. This comes from the DOJ, we trust the DOJ. They're actually now saying the opposite. We see so many frivolous cases right now that are just meant to flood the zone and to be, I don't know, push a political narrative, that we're starting from the other position. Actually, the judge in this James Comey and Letitia James case, he was so mad that he told them, I'm disappointed here because normally in a court of law, you start with a crime and you work your way backwards until you find who's the criminal, who's responsible for the crime. But with you guys here, what I'm seeing is a pattern that you're starting with a criminal with a name, and then you're working your way forward to see what you can actually find. You're doing this backward. You got it backwards. You start with the person, and then you try to find the crime. You go fishing to see what you... That's a real witch hunt. And the judge said it. And guys, judges are not stupid. One of the judges, I think it was in Chicago, when it came to the National Guard case, one of the judges in Chicago said, do you guys realize that I live here? Because, they were claiming, this is the apocalypse. This is, the end of the world. We have so much violence on the streets. It's uncontrollable violence. Local authorities can't deal with this. We need the National Guard. Why? Because we have laws, right? We have the posse comitatus, law, and then you have, which is the other one, the insurrection law. There's two different laws that control federalizing our military or the National Guard. And these laws state that there has to be a foreign invasion. There was no foreign invasion. That there has to be some rebellion, local rebellion. There was no local rebellion. Or number three, that local authorities can't handle the situation, and that's why they need extra support. So there was no problem with local authorities handling whatever little protests we had against ICE in different locations. None of those three requirements were actually met, and the judges were saying, this is the reality here. So then Trump's lawyers would keep pushing, and, DOJ's lawyers would keep pushing the narrative. No, there's this massive, rebellion right now here, uncontrollable, local authorities can't handle it. And the judge told them, you guys know I live here, right? You guys know I have eyes. I'm not blind. I live here in Chicago. I haven't seen this rebellion and foreign invasion and uncontrollable chaos, mob, that you are claiming are flooding the streets in Chicago. I'm not seeing that. So where's that coming from? They're lying. They're literally lying, plainly, blatantly lying, shamefully lying to the courts. But the judges are not stupid, and that's a good thing. So I guess there's a little bit of hope that even though Trump will always get away with some cases like he just did in Georgia, I'm not sure, if this guy just dropped the case, if they dismissed it, with or without prejudice. So I have to go and, like I said, I have to go and check on that case so that we can come and discuss it. I think it's shameful, but we still have judges doing the right thing, just going by the book, just following the law, whatever that is, wherever that's going to take them, regardless of if it's Donald Trump or not, because we can't have a two-tier, system in the country. Donald Trump just can't be above the law. But that's all for today, guys. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Aranzamendi podcast. Please, I am helping, I am helping Brian Tyler Cohen with his Spanish channel. If you speak Spanish, or even if you don't, if you want to support our work, please go to the Brian Tyler Cohen Español channel, leave a like, subscribe, share one of the videos. If you have any Spanish-speaking family members, friends, co-workers, you can send them to this channel. I also have my channel too. So if you're here, you're watching my show, the Aranzamendi podcast, I host a Spanish podcast called Aranzamendi Podcast Español. That's my main podcast. So I'm just trying to actually be a little bit more active here in my English podcast too. So anyway, thank you. Please like, subscribe to support my work, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Okay, so take care.